It was 1999 and oh boy, the hype was real. For the first time in 16 years, Star Wars was returning to movie theaters with episode 1 of the eagerly anticipated Star Wars prequel trilogy, so fans can bear witness to the events that led to one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time, which created a huge public pandemonium and mania of fans who were excited, as if some kind of historical event was about to take place. Yep, Star Wars was now no longer an old relic of the late 70s and early 80s, it was returning to the world of 1999, a time of Y2K, Britney Spears, and The Matrix. However, when The Phantom Menace finally did come out, fans, both hardcore and casual, were less than thrilled, thanks to what was felt to be bad acting, annoying characters, and a boring story involving taxation, economics, and trade federations. People wondered if the impossible may have actually happened. Could it be that a Star Wars movie came out that actually sucks? One that turned out to just be a huge floating piece of space junk? Bye-bye. So I guess the logic was taxation and trading? Come on, just give me laser swords and space battles! But could it be that the Phantom Menace was the ugly duckling of the series that grew up into being a glorious Jedi swan? Well, today we're going to try and find out as we look into 10 things that you didn't know about the Phantom Menace. Prepare yourself because, to quote Debbie Does Dallas, this is a big one. So let's check it out. Number 10. George Lucas had motivational issues. Really, ever since the making of The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, the prequel trilogy was set in stone. It was here that Lucas made that current saga of Star Wars films the second half of a larger story, where we learn that Darth Vader is really Anakin Skywalker, a former Jedi Knight turned evil and Luke Skywalker's father. And so the third installment, Return of the Jedi, is released in 1983 and seemingly wrapped up the saga, with the promised first half of this saga still waiting in the wings. However, it seemed that Lucas had become disillusioned with Star Wars and was unmotivated. In the following years, other big franchises would follow, and it would seem that Star Wars was now a distant memory in the shadow of these new upcoming franchises. However, as the 90s took off, so did other Star Wars media, like comic books and novels, of which extended the mythology, and were actually very popular. This made Lucas realise that there was still some lead in the old pencil, where in 1994 he got to work on his much anticipated Star Wars epic, the one that started it all, Episode 1. In fact, I can remember sometime in the mid-90s, there were rumours that George Lucas was making a prequel trilogy and a sequel trilogy. Yeah, anyone else remember that? I thought to myself, a sequel trilogy too? Huh, that'll be awesome! Be careful what you wish for. Number 9. Recalibrating the myth. So the word was out on the grapevine that George Lucas was finally getting to work on his Star Wars prequels, and the time seemed right for it too. There was now a nostalgic vested interest in the original Star Wars trilogy, and in the early 90s there was a breakthrough with computer-generated special effects, with the likes of Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. So now Lucas's vision can be fully realised. I can remember at the time hearing so many crazy rumours, it was kind of insane. Rumours like Macaulay Culkin was going to play young Luke Skywalker as a child. And I can remember hearing that Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to star in it. I think at one stage Michael Jackson was going to star in it. However, while the gossip tittle-tattle took place, Lucas was structuring his space masterpiece. Originally, the main focus on the prequels was to be on Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, Lucas shifted the focus to Anakin Skywalker. Lucas also changed the timeline to start when Anakin Skywalker is a child growing up on Tatooine, with the entire Star Wars saga being about the life of Anakin, from him as a young boy to his death as an old man. Originally, Anakin was to be 12 years old, but Lucas then decided to make him 9, with the separation from his mother, Shmi Skywalker, being a touchstone event that would start Anakin's eventual descent into the dark side. Also in the original script, Obi-Wan Kenobi was the wiser, older Jedi Master, and Qui-Gon Jinn was the apprentice in training, till Lucas did a switcheroo with the characters. And of course, Lucas created the character of a Sith apprentice known as Darth Maul. Definitely a highlight in The Phantom Menace. Number 8. Original title. So George Lucas didn't direct The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, due to the strains that come with directing, with his only Star Wars directing credit being the original Star Wars movie in 1977. And it seems in the early days of The Phantom Menace's production, Lucas did toy with the idea of someone else directing, where Ron Howard, Robert Zemeckis, and Steven Spielberg were approached to direct, but each of them found the job too daunting. So Lucas himself stood up to the plate of spearheading his own mythology. And now, for the first time in the series, for better or worse, George Lucas would have complete creative control over his movie. No one getting in his way, telling him no, or suggesting, hey, maybe we try it this way instead. Nope, it was now pure George Lucas full speed ahead. So the big question that was on everyone's minds was, what was going to be the name of this new Star Wars movie? Once again, it was rumours galore, with all sorts of names flying around the place, with the likes of Rise of the Empire, Fall of the Jedi, that usual kind of stuff. The original title Lucas actually gave The Phantom Menace was The Beginning. Yep, Star Wars Episode 1, The Beginning. And I can see that. Yeah, it works. In fact, it wasn't till later in the movie's production that the film was then retitled to The Phantom Menace. I can remember it being announced and there was so much confusion. People were like, The Phantom Menace? Like, what? Who is this Phantom? Is it this old guy? Is it that guy with the horns on his head? Is it that old lady who says, "Storm's coming, Annie, you better get home"? Is it Dennis the Menace? Who is this Phantom and why are they a menace? In fact, even to this day, the title of The Phantom Menace often comes under scrutiny and the subject of jokes. But to be fair, when you learn the subtext of the title, according to George Lucas, it actually makes sense. It's a reference to how Senator Palpatine is secretly an evil Sith Lord who is hiding his true self by posing as a well-meaning politician who becomes a chancellor and thus sets off the chain of events, with his true evil self being hidden in plain sight. He is a master manipulator who's orchestrating the entire turn of events. So, to be fair, in that subtext, in my opinion, the Phantom Menace title actually really does work. Once again, once you know the subtext of it. I think the problem is, to a lot of casual Star Wars fans, they may not have pieced together that Palpatine is the Emperor from the original trilogy. So, in that regard, the name The Phantom Menace would have been lost on them. Number 7. Intergalactic casting. When it came to the heroic and well-meaning but slightly ill-judged Qui-Gon Jinn, or as many other people know him as, Space Jesus, several actors were considered, including Morgan Freeman, Kurt Russell, and Kyle MacLachlan. However, the part ultimately went to Irish actor Liam Neeson, who had a huge uprise in movies in the 90s thanks to his role in Schindler's List. Joseph Fiennes auditioned to play Obi-Wan Kenobi and very nearly got the part, but apparently George Lucas's daughter didn't think that he was right for the role, and so the part went to Scottish actor Ewan McGregor, who, although wasn't quite big in the States yet, was a rising star in the UK, thanks to starring in popular movies like Shallow Grave and Trainspotting. McGregor had to wear a wig for the reshoots, as by that stage he grew his hair for another role. And I think you can tell the shots where he's wearing a wig, as his natural hair looked untamed and more wiry, as well as looking more natural. Whereas his wig just awkwardly sits there with no follicle movement whatsoever, and oddly looks puffy, once again because he had long hair underneath it. Vinette Robinson and Keira Knightley were considered to play Padme, and as we all know, Natalie Portman won the role, as she had previously starred in many popular films at that point, including Leon the Professional and Mars Attacks. Although Keira Knightley was cast in the lesser role of Padme's decoy, and according to Wikipedia, her parents tried to talk her out of it, but she was like, nope, I'm gonna do this. Benicio del Toro was originally cast as Darth Maul, but the part ended up going to martial arts expert Ray Park. You see, he originally was just part of the stunt crew, but he blew everyone away with his martial arts skills, so he was upgraded to the vital role of Darth Maul. Michael Jackson really wanted to play Jar Jar Binks, and he wanted to do so with prosthetic makeup. But this didn't sit with George Lucas's vision, as he wanted Jar Jar to be an entire CGI character. Ahmed Best ended up playing the part, lending his voice and acting as a physical stand-in for the character. When it came to Mace Windu, a character who would become more prominent in the following films, Tupac was originally considered for the part, but sadly his life was cut short. And legend has it that Samuel L. Jackson got the part because he expressed interest in one day starring in a Star Wars movie, and well, that was it, he got the part. And some Star Wars regulars return, including Kenny Baker as R2-D2, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, although this time he's just lending his voice, Frank Oz as Yoda, and Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine and Darth Sidious. There are also some big names as side characters too, including Terrence Stamp, Sofia Coppola, and Brian Blessed. Number 6. Putting the Annie in Anakin. The most important part of casting with The Phantom Menace was that of little Anakin Skywalker, the lost soul who ties this movie together. Heck, the entire saga together. I mean, after all, this kid is one day going to be Darth Vader, so they had to get the casting right with this one. Apparently over 3,000 child actors auditioned to play Anakin Skywalker, which is insane, with several child actors being considered, including Haley Joel Osment, but he was too busy seeing dead people at that time. It was eventually rounded down to just 3 little boys, all of whom arrived to do screen tests where they would meet and greet with Natalie Portman, and then Lucas would film their screen tests with Portman. And to be honest, I think this one kid here was the better actor, and just had this intense look in his eye, like it felt that behind those eyes could be an intergalactic dictator somewhere along the track in his future. Ultimately, Lucas went with Jake Lloyd, who previously starred in the Christmas comedy Jingle All the Way. And yeah, look, I don't want to trash on a child actor, but to me it feels like they didn't go for the better actor per se, but rather the kid who looked like he could have been on all the cereal commercials. To me, Lloyd doesn't act so much in The Phantom Menace, but more acts like a child who's trying to act. Probably because he is very young, and has probably been yanked out of school and his usual home life to make a big Hollywood movie, the biggest movie of its time. That'll be tough on any kid. And I just feel that, in my opinion of course, they should have gone for a stronger, more convincing child actor, considering what an important and powerful role it's meant to be, of which whenever Anakin speaks, it has to come from conviction, and not sounding like a kid awkwardly reading a line. So when it comes to the cycle of Anakin, we've got him as a kid, where he likes to be called Annie, and as an angry young man, whatever you do, don't call him Annie. And as an old man, whatever you do, don't call him Egghead. Okay, I swear I got that joke from somewhere, I just can't remember where. I think, as others have pointed out, The Phantom Menace actually features quite a few kids. It's like the filmmakers all have kids now and wanted to incorporate that into Star Wars. It's like, yeah, I now have an 8-year-old, so we've got to make it more kid-centric. But they hadn't quite caught on to the fact that most people find kids in movies to be really irritating. Sorry, but yeah, not every child actor is going to be Henry Thomas in E.T. Number 5. Filming The Menace. So filming for The Phantom Menace started in June 1997, and just like the original Star Wars movie, Lucas returned to Tunisia, which doubled for the alien planet of Tatooine. However, despite a now improved technology and budget, it was still a nightmare to film at the location, as on the 3rd day of shooting, the location was hit by an unexpected but brutal sandstorm, which destroyed a great deal of the sets and props, all of which had to be immediately repaired or replaced, in order to get the filming back on schedule. The Royal Palace of Caserta in Naples, Italy, was used to film scenes in the Naboo Palace. The Naboo forest scenes were filmed in the Cassioberry Park in Hertfordshire, England. Most of the filming took place on sets at Leavesden Film Studio, now known as Warner Bros. Leavesden Studio, also located in England. The studio was actually fairly new at that time, and was previously used to film scenes for GoldenEye and Sleepy Hollow, and would subsequently be used to film the Harry Potter movies, and the studio is still going strong to this day. Now, I think The Phantom Menace represents a time when the abundance of blue screen was now being used, where unlike the original trilogy, where we would see the actors on actual physical sets that were built, now a great deal of the behind the scenes mainly sees actors performing in front of blue screens in order to create CGI backgrounds, with the poor actors no doubt having to use their imaginations in order to act out these scenes. In fact, I feel like there were some shots in the movie itself where you can see the scenery is entirely CGI, except for the actors, with the odd moment here and there where Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor look genuinely confused and like they don't know what on earth is going on. After all, this was a very new technology back then and a new way of filmmaking. And yes, this led to the Star Wars movies to look more digital and computer generated, with The Phantom Menace using over 2,000 shots of visual effects. At the time, this led to people questioning movies being nearly made entirely out of CGI, and whether or not that takes the realism out of movies, especially if movies are now just going to be made on computers. Like it takes something away from movies, the human handcraft aspect, and makes movies feel more fake and computer generated. In fact, I can vividly remember seeing George Lucas being questioned about this on 60 Minutes, where he adamantly defended his choice of most of the movie being made out of computer graphics, by arguing that movies aren't real in the first place, and that if you look behind the movie screen, you'll see it's just a piece of wood. And yes, what Lucas is saying is true. Movies aren't real, they are fiction, they're made up, they're fantasy. But I think he missed the point that this new digital computer effects direction took away something organic that was very true to the original trilogy. The world in those movies looked dirty and lived in. To me, this entire prequel trilogy just felt synthetic and fake. Too crisp, too clean, and more digital scenery than actual physical location. I think Lucas had some very good ideas, like exploring Palpatine as a manipulative politician who gains control by a fake facade, but also had baffling ideas, like deciding the Force, which has been described as a mystical presence that surrounds and binds everything, is actually midichlorians, cells that live in the blood and give the Jedi their power. You see, this is why I think Lucas works better in a collaborative process, rather than him being in full control. I can imagine that if Gary Kurtz, who produced the first Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, also produced The Phantom Menace, when George Lucas says the Force is now going to be a disease in the blood, Kurtz probably would have been like, oh, come on George, let's not do that. That's silly. Number 4. Marketing the Menace, aka the trailer broke the world. So the whole world was eagerly anticipating this new Star Wars movie, like this was the biggest movie event for its time. Any tiny glimmer into the movie would make headlines and cause pandemonium among fans. An early teaser poster was released in November 1998, which showed little Anakin on Tatooine, with his shadow casting a silhouette of Darth Vader, which ultimately is powerful imagery, and got fans hyped as hell. However, when it actually came to a theatrical poster, Lucas used the illustration services of Drew Struzan. Then there was the merchandising. Wow, there was Phantom Menace everywhere. Back in 1999, you couldn't escape the damn thing. As of course, there was toys, video games, shirts, soda cans, potato chips, books, you name it, the Phantom Menace was slapped on it. To me, I think the most interesting was Phantom Menace shampoo. Yep, now you can wash your hair with the power of the Force and have that midichlorian shine. Even the soundtrack was hugely popular, which of course saw John Williams return and deliver his epic piece known as the Duel of Fates, which would become a popular and important anthem in the Star Wars mythology. Incidentally, John Williams recorded the prequel music at Abbey Road. Yes, as in Abbey Road. However, when it came to marketing, nowhere did things get more intense than the trailer. Oh boy, this was a trailer of the ages. The very first trailer was released alongside the movie Meet Joe Black, a romantic drama starring Brad Pitt. And it was discovered that people were buying tickets to see Meet Joe Black just to see the Phantom Menace trailer, and were then leaving once they saw the trailer. Well, I guess they weren't sticking around for Brad Pitt's beautiful peroxided hairdo. The trailer would then be released alongside other movies, including The Waterboy, The Siege, A Bug's Life, and Wing Commander. In order to stop people leaving after watching the trailer, and to actually get the audiences to watch the actual movies they paid for, some movie theaters had to promise an additional teaser trailer after the movie presentation. The trailer would then get officially released publicly on the Star Wars website, and it broke records for being downloaded over 1 million times within the first 24 hours of the trailer being uploaded. Now, one of the most serious aspects of fan desperation of The Phantom Menace came in the form of a pirate copy of the movie that was circulating within the black market. And for some reason, it was really prominent and doing the rounds here in Australia. It was recorded via a video camera from a private screening of The Phantom Menace, and this pirate copy started circulating before The Phantom Menace was even released, so this was a big deal, and it's believed the recording either happened in Moscow or Hong Kong, although I've heard some claims that it could have been Thailand or the Philippines, and it was available to either download or buy on VHS or DVD. This represented a new day and age of video piracy, of movies being sold illegally before even being released, and could have been disaster for Lucasfilm, but thankfully for the company, it was not. It was actually pretty big for its time. I can even remember it made it onto the news here. Now jump a few months later, and a mate from school said to me one day, "Hey, I've got a copy of The Phantom Menace on video. I'll give it to you for $20. So at the end of school, I met him behind the bike shed, and yes, this was The Phantom Menace, watched through a potato. The potato menace, if you will. You could barely see the picture as the quality was so terrible, the sound was out of sync, and you'll constantly hear people coughing and getting up and walking past the screen. I think at one stage, some guy got up and scratched his bum. Yeah, clearly not Lucasfilm approved. I don't think George Lucas had any plans of releasing The Phantom Menace, the butt-scratching edition. Number 3, deleted scenes. So there are several deleted scenes that didn't make it into the final cut of The Phantom Menace. This includes a sequence where Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon and Jar Jar arrive at the Naboo Palace from the underwater Gungan city, where our heroes nearly fall down a waterfall, and Qui-Gon has to save the day with some kind of Batman grappling hook. It was removed because it was felt that it didn't really add anything to the story and just slowed everything down. There's an extended scene at the Skywalker residence on Tatooine, shortly before the pod racing. I think the scene was to show more of R2-D2 and C-3PO interacting. Just before the pod race starts, we see more of the aliens and their fan bases who were participating in the race. And once again, it doesn't really add anything. Although the Mos Eisley Cantina Band returns, so I guess that's pretty cool, right? This scene was followed up by more of a build-up as the race was about to start, and the pods were revving up their engines in preparation to start racing. Once again, it's like, come on, just get on with it. And of course, we have more shots of the race itself, which also includes Sandmen shooting at Jawas. Afterwards, there's a scene where Anakin is fighting young Greedo, because Greedo thinks that Anakin cheated in the race. Qui-Gon breaks up the fight, and tells Anakin that if he truly knows that he didn't cheat, then that's all that matters. And that, he'll just have to put up with other people saying otherwise. You know, easy as that. Just don't let it affect you. Clearly because fighting isn't the Jedi way. I actually kind of like this scene. It's nice seeing Qui-Gon act so kind and wise to Anakin, and even fatherly, but it also shows that Anakin doesn't have much control over his impulses, and could easily resort to violence, aka he has it in him to turn to anger and vengeance. Besides, Anakin needn't worry, as in 32 years' time, Greedo would be shot by a space smuggler, who absolutely did shoot first. As Qui-Gon and Anakin are preparing to leave, Qui-Gon strikes down Darth Maul's probe droid, which instantly alarms Qui-Gon and makes him realise that someone is trying to hunt them down, but who? At the political hearing at the Imperial Senate building, we do see more politicians that we didn't see in the final film. And yes, I know some people may freak out if I didn't mention that E.T.'s alien species have a cameo in this scene. There's a nice scene after the space battle where Anakin returns and is worried that he's going to get in trouble. It's a cute scene and reminds us that Annie is just a kid. Look, none of these scenes were really needed and were just excess baggage, so I can understand them being removed. But, I guess it's interesting seeing lost footage. Number 2, a stale letdown. I think the warning signs were there from the start that The Phantom Menace may not be the life-changing masterpiece that everyone thought that it was going to be, thanks to this now infamous footage of George Lucas and other Lucasfilm staff watching the completed movie for the first time, where Lucas famously says, "I may have gone too far." There's almost like a feeling of panic in the footage, and no one in this footage looks particularly thrilled or pleased with the movie they just saw. It's really worrying. It almost looks as though there's a feeling of dread. Despite this though, hardcore fans who could not wait to relive that Star Wars magic once again had lined up at local movie theatres to see the new Star Wars movie. Some had even lined up for days, like as in people were camping in the street just to be among the first to see The Phantom Menace. Some people came from all over the world just so they can say, "I was there, I was one of the first to see The Phantom Menace." There are even mass reports of people taking the day off work just to see this film, which led to people being fired from their jobs and some businesses even being closed down on The Phantom Menace's opening day, as if there was some kind of collective hypermania over this movie. So it was May 19th, 1999, and The Phantom Menace was released all around America. And the film didn't exactly go down with a cheering bang, but more of a mediocre whimper. I've heard many fans speak about that day, watching The Phantom Menace the day it came out, and as the movie was being screened before them, they just got this soul-crushing feeling in their hearts of, "Oh my god, this is actually not going to be a good movie. This isn't the great and spectacular Star Wars that I remember and grew up with in the late 70s and early 80s. What's happened?" Some fans were even in denial and thought maybe this was a Star Wars movie that you had to see a few times, to really understand and appreciate it. But nope, at the time, it just wasn't growing on people. And the grim prospect hit the public of, could it be that this Star Wars movie that people have been waiting 16 years for now could actually suck? Star Wars of all things sucks? Yep, sadly Star Wars had been released and the verdict was out there by fans and critics that this Star Wars movie was a disappointment, with the script and characters particularly being criticised. We were lucky here in Australia because we got the movie after it had been released everywhere else, so we already had a heads up that it was not a particularly great film. I can specifically remember being up late one night doing homework because I was in high school, and a late night news bulletin came on the TV and said the new Star Wars movie has been described by early reviews as, quote, a stale letdown. And I never forgot those words, stale letdown. And it has stayed with me ever since, as I thought to myself, a stale letdown? How on earth can Star Wars of all things be a stale letdown? They've surely got this wrong. This must be a case of critics just being critics. There's no way this movie can be anything but a masterpiece. But no, as time went by, more and more people were saying, you know what, it's not a very good film. I can even remember going to the movie theatre to watch The Phantom Menace. I went with my older sister and her boyfriend, and the cinema was absolutely packed. And I thought, wow, maybe The Phantom Menace is a pretty good film after all. Look at how many people have showed up to watch it. But as I got closer to the huge crowd, I could see they were actually dressed up as Austin Powers characters, or general 1960s attire, as they were all there to watch Austin Powers, the Spy Who Shagged Me. That movie at my local cinema was going nuts. Meanwhile, the Phantom Menace movie theatre was half empty, and I just remember thinking, all the people and hype had gone to Austin Powers. I don't think this was the turnout that George Lucas was hoping for. And look, I can remember watching the film, and I didn't find it as offensive as other people made it out to be, nor was I outraged. Apart from the speed racer scene, which I actually really did enjoy, and I also thought Darth Maul was a really cool villain, I just found the movie to be really meh. I mean, it was serviceable and fine, but generally just had this feeling of, yeah, that was okay, I guess. And then after watching it, I pretty much immediately forgot about it. Now granted, I did already have a heads up that it was a disappointing movie, but I found it okay. But I guess that's part of the problem. I can remember watching the original trilogy for the first time and feeling like I was entering a new world like I had never seen before. It was fun and exciting and a little bit scary. It was an amazing experience that really reached the bounds of my imagination. The original trilogy was never just okay. Number 1, surviving the Phantom Menace. So with all the vitriol that followed in the wake of the Phantom Menace, from complaints that the movie was written badly and it was just boring, it seems that the two aspects of the movie that copped it the most was Jake Lloyd's acting and dialogue and the character Jar Jar Binks. Oh boy, the hate was strong for this character. I can remember getting the Phantom Menace on VHS, and here it is, this very VHS. And my dad, who was a massive Star Wars fan and saw the original trilogy in movie theaters, saw that I had this video and got really excited and said, yeah, I'll watch that. So that night we were watching this, and I think we got to the part where Jar Jar Binks gets his head zapped by the electric currents, where my dad had his arms crossed like this, and he looked really grumpy, had this real sour look on his face like this. And I'll never forget it. He said, I don't like this Jar Jar character. He's really annoying. When does he leave the movie? And I'm like, I'm sorry, Dad, you're stuck with him. He is here till the end. So my dad, who at this stage looked really quite heartbroken, just simply said, oh, okay then. And he got up and left the living room and walked away from Star Wars, really never to return from that point. Look, there's no getting around it. Jar Jar Binks is a misguided character who absolutely infuriated an entire fan base. And I get it, he was meant to be a comical character, there to make the kids laugh, but it was really ill-advised. It's okay having a comedic foil, but it shouldn't be annoying to the stage where fans are about ready to disown an entire franchise over it. And there have even been fan edits of The Phantom Menace that remove Jar Jar Binks' scenes, or at least cut them back a bit, to try and make him a bit more tolerable. Likewise, I think Jake Lloyd's acting was poor. But it's not entirely his fault. I mean, there's only so much he can do when the script has him saying things like, yippee. Sadly, in later years, both Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best would suffer misfortunes. Jake Lloyd would have to face school bullying thanks to his performance in Star Wars, which would lead him to quit acting, and in later years he has suffered mental health difficulties, which in turn has led him to tough times and several legal issues. Ahmed Best also suffered, as he took the criticism towards Jar Jar Binks personally. I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be very nice having pretty much the whole world criticizing and mocking your craft, and was so hurt and upset that the character was disliked so much and pretty much rejected, he had even contemplated putting an end to his own life. Thankfully, he did not. I think in recent years there has been a social public push for people to not be so hard on the characters of little Anakin and Jar Jar Binks, due to the difficulties and challenges Lloyd and Best have faced. So much so, a remorseful Simon Pegg sent a public, emotional, heartfelt apology for publicly mocking Jar Jar Binks in a comedy sketch, saying he didn't realise the harm he was doing to Ahmed Best. But look, here's the thing. I think we should all be able to call a spade a spade. If there is a character who is insufferably annoying, we should be able to say, you know what? That character is insufferably annoying. Likewise, if there's an acting performance that isn't very good, we should be able to say the acting performance wasn't very good. That's how we make changes and improvements. And unfortunately, it's a fact that when we put ourselves out there publicly, we take the risk that we may not be embraced and we may be criticized. Heck, that's a risk I'm taking right now. But does this mean we should harass the actors? Of course not. That's ridiculous. Don't do that. Remember, you've always got to separate the actor from the performance. Yes, say your piece about the movie or the acting or the characters, but try and also be kind to the actors and don't go after them. And I do wish both Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best all the best in the future. And I have great empathy that they've struggled through some really difficult times. As for The Phantom Menace itself, well, despite its heavy criticism and public roastings, it was still the highest earning movie of 1999. It made over $1 billion on its $115 million budget. And to be honest, in recent years, many people have even defended The Phantom Menace, claiming that it's just a misunderstood masterpiece, and people were too harsh to it upon its release. And you know what? Maybe the hype was so big and so intense, the movie was set up to fail. Like there was no way it could live up to that mass worldwide hype. And look, maybe it did become cool to hate on The Phantom Menace, because I think people find fascination in seeing great icons fail. That's an irresistible story that we've all loved since the dawn of humanity. And cinematically, you don't get a bigger icon than Star Wars, or at least back then. Well, you know the old saying, the higher they rise, the harder they fall. Upon reflection, I think Lucas wanted to show the first steps of the fall of a civilization and how everything plummets to war. And yes, this can be the result of trading difficulties and issues with taxation. But by making it so political and like real life, when it comes to the Phantom Menace, it feels like the fantasy was taken out of space fantasy, in my opinion of course. And so personally, I just didn't find it very compelling. People didn't want to watch a Star Wars movie about tax economics. However, in this day and age where Disney has released Star Wars trash left, right and center, The Phantom Menace honestly doesn't seem all that bad now. Yeah, there are things about the movie that I find irritating, and it's a film I can only watch every now and then, but I think it's an okay movie. Does The Phantom Menace deserve scrutiny and discussion into some of its creative decisions? Yes, definitely. Does it deserve all the hate it got and continues to get? No, I don't think so. Wow, what a perplexing movie this truly is. To me, The Phantom Menace is the weakest link in the prequel trilogy, and that things did pick up slightly with Attack of the Clones, but we did get the Star Wars magic once again with Revenge of the Sith. It's just that it was a bit of a rocky start to get there. But I can appreciate that in recent years, The Phantom Menace has had an increase of fan appreciation. And every now and then, yeah, I'll watch it. Anyway, I'm Minty. And sadly, for that moment in 1999, for the first time, the Force was not with Star Wars. See ya!